Welcome in to a special episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today I'm looking at Dynasty buys, sells, other things based on all the moves on NFL Cutdown Day. It's not everything, but I'm covering the most important ones. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's jump into our main story. To me, I thought this was actually the biggest story. Jonathon Brooks remains on the NFI PUP list. He will miss the first 4 games of the 2024 season. Now, it's not a surprise as of recently, but I honestly expected when we did the process back in April and May that Brooks would play week 1. I thought he would be brought along slowly, but that he would play week 1. So things came along a little bit slower than expected over the past few months. Now, what does this mean for me? And at least what I've seen in the Dynasty Daddy trade database, Brooks is now a strong Dynasty buy. He's only 21 years old. Nothing has changed about his prospect profile, nor his draft capital. Yes, it's a downgrade that he won't play the first 4 games. Yes, you might want to downgrade him a little bit. But we know that when we get to the season, Dynasty becomes redraft. And Dynasty managers overreact if they had different expectations. Now, how would I go about doing this? These are all real trades from the Dynasty Daddy database. Number 1, you could buy Brooks and a 25 first for Kyren Williams and a 25 second. I love that. You get younger, better overall talent, at least as a prospect, and a first round pick versus a second. I would smash this deal, obviously. Could you turn Kenneth Walker or Isaiah Pacheco into Jonathon Brooks? I still would rather have Jonathon Brooks long term. Maybe this would be something you'd look to do. And then this last one, which I thought was wild. I love Breece Hall, but in a Superflex league, if I could get Jonathon Brooks and 225 firsts for any running back, I mean, no running back is worth that much, I would absolutely do it. The 25 class is going to have a lot of great running backs in it. And 225 firsts and Brooks, this was a Superflex league, is worth almost as much as all but the absolute elite of the elite players. Now, our next big story, I guess, not really a big story. TJ Hockenson remains on the PUP list. Like Brooks, Hockenson will miss the first 4 games of the season. But this was always expected. I don't think anyone thought Hockenson would play week 1. Nobody was telling me that. Nobody. I didn't hear that from anybody. Unlike Brooks, I think Hockenson is on or ahead of schedule. For me, he's also a strong Dynasty buy. He's 27 years old, young for a Dynasty tight end. He possesses a strong contract that the Vikings cannot get out of through 2025. It injury guaranteed because he's injured. So that salary for 2025 is absolutely locked in. Now, here are some trades I saw for TJ Hockenson. You could buy him for Dallas Goedert and a 25 third. I'm doing that all day. Hockenson and a 25 first, Trey McBride. I love Trey McBride. Is there a 25 first in value between them? Probably not. I think some people would probably say, oh, McBride must be 5 years younger than Hockenson. He's only 2 years younger. And then this last one, buy TJ Hockenson from Romeo Doubs in a 25 second. I mean, that is a smash. So I would do that very quickly to get some TJ Hockenson on my team. And then I would say this is the last, really big news, really, really big NFL news, higher end players. CeeDee Lamb signed a contract extension, 4 years, $136 million with the Cowboys with $100 million guaranteed. It dropped right after I recorded the Monday video, yesterday's video. Locks Lamb in through 2028. I'm glad the saga's over. There's not much to say about it. I have CeeDee Lamb as wide receiver 3 in Dynasty. I had him at wide receiver 3 before. For me, the issue is Dak Prescott. If Dak Prescott signed an extension today, maybe Lamb would be my wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. But my problem is that I don't see that extension. So until that happens, Lamb is going to remain at wide receiver 30 because of the 3 top receivers, he's the one I'm most worried about without a good quarterback. Justin Jefferson will survive it and still be a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. Not sure CeeDee Lamb will be able to do quite what Justin Jefferson can. Next up, D'Onta Foreman was cut by the Browns. I'm actually kind of stunned here. He seemed like a perfect early down compliment to Jerome Ford until Nick Chubb came back. But I'd recommend hanging on to Foreman to see if he catches on elsewhere back with the Browns. The Browns only kept 2 running backs on their initial 53-man roster. Foreman doesn't go through waivers, so they can bring him back at any time. But I do think Strong is a must-add in all Dynasty leagues. But I do expect the Browns to either bring Foreman back or add another running back. They're not going to carry just 2 running backs on their active roster. But this was something definitely notable that they cut Deontay Foreman. Carson Steele made the Chiefs, and Deneric Prince didn't. The Chiefs released Prince and Luis Rees-Zammit, who I kept telling people was never, ever going to be relevant. I don't know why people were ever interested in him. They kept Isaiah Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Carson Steele as their 3 running backs. For now, I think in Dynasty leagues, you must roster both Edwards-Helaire and Steele. If I could only pick one, I would rather have Steele. You can drop Prince in all Dynasty leagues. There's no point in hanging on to a player who hasn't made the 53-man roster 2 years in a row. So yeah, he can go. Next up, A.J. Dillon out for the year, and MarShawn Lloyd is not on IR. There were some mixed reports about this. Some people were saying MarShawn Lloyd would go on IR. He did not, but A.J. Dillon did. He went on season-ending IR. He's out for the entire season. If you don't have an IR spot to use on A.J. Dillon, you can drop him. He is not worth your time in Dynasty leagues. As for Lloyd, he's on the active roster. The Packers didn't use a return designation on him, so I assume he'll return within the first 4 weeks. He claims he's ready to play week 1. I think week 2 or 3 is more likely. I'd consider buying low on Lloyd, but it would have to be really low. I'm not liking what I'm hearing about MarShawn Lloyd. I'm really not liking it. Not looking so good. We're having some issues. So, yeah, it's going to have to be significantly less than what he cost in the rookie draft. I mean, a 25 third and fourth maybe. But otherwise, I'm staying away from MarShawn Lloyd. Kendre Miller opened or will open the season on injured reserve. He has not practiced with a hamstring injury. He'll miss 4 games. He's dead to me. He's dead to me. He's dead to Dennis Allen. I'll take any 3rd-round pick in any year for Kendre Miller. And yeah, I couldn't be any less interested in Kendre Miller. So unfortunately, this is a player I was really high on the prospect. I liked him last year, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. This is one of those times where I'd rather get something back for my losses instead of holding and getting nothing. You should sign up for the Patreon. Top right corner for the link. You get my rankings, access to the Discord, and the ability to ask in advance questions for the YouTube videos. Tiers begin at just $6 a month and include all of that. And of course, this channel is focused on Dynasty Fantasy Football. Redraft and start-sit content will only take place on the Patreon, not on Twitter, not in the YouTube comments, only on Patreon for redraft and start-sit content. If you want to know more about the Patreon, check out the Why You Should Join the Patreon video on the channel. I really appreciate everyone who signed up and any new patrons who join. And I thank everyone for supporting my content. With that said, we'll jump into the next. So Elijah Mitchell is out for the year. He went on season-ending injury reserve with a hamstring injury. This was a surprise. This honestly came out of nowhere to me. And unfortunately for those looking at some deep guys, 49ers actually kept Patrick Taylor as a 4th running back behind Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, and Isaac Guerrero. They released Cody Schrader. So obviously you can cut Schrader in all Dynasty leagues. And as for the rest of the backfield, I think you have to continue to roster both Mason and Guerrero. If I had to choose one, I'd rather have Mason. But they're both must-roster players in all Dynasty leagues. And Mitchell's a free agent after this year, so he's not really in the picture. I don't know if I would cut Mitchell. It's hard because we know he's been good, but he really doesn't have any Dynasty value now that he's injured and out for the year. So if you need him and need the spot and don't have an IR spot, I'm fine cutting Elijah Mitchell. Next up, Malik Willis traded from the Packers to the Packers from the Titans. Packers get Malik Willis. Titans get 25 7th-round pick. Essentially no cost for Willis. Willis lost the backup job to Mason Rudolph on the Titans, which was expected. The Packers also released both Sean Clifford and Michael Pratt. One might come back on the practice squad, but clearly they were practice squad quality players. Willis is a nice add in deep superflex leagues as the clear backup to Jordan Love with rushing upside. We know that we like adding rushing quarterbacks. We like adding backup quarterbacks in superflex. Willis is both in one player. In most superflex leagues, I would suggest if Willis was cut to add him to the back of your roster. I would do that. Next up, kind of a surprising cut. Evan Hall was cut by the Colts. 23 fifth rounder. I thought he was safe behind Jonathan Taylor and Trey Sermon, especially that Sermon had been dealing with some injuries. At this point, I think Sermon is rostered in every single Dynasty league now, but if somehow he's not, he should be rostered in every league. Hull, unfortunately, can be dropped. He's a fifth-round pick who hasn't done anything. I really like the prospect, but there's no reason to roster someone who has done nothing in 2 years. He can be dropped. Odell Beckham Jr. remains on the PUP. Now, some might be saying, when was Odell Beckham Jr. on the PUP? He's actually never practiced. Never for the Dolphins. The door is open for Malik Washington to earn the wide receiver 3 job because Taj Washington's also on IR. There's really not a lot of competition. It's not even important in the Dolphins if you need the roster spot and you do not have an IR spot for OBJ, you can cut him in Dynasty. You can. Absolutely. I am fine cutting him. He's going to be 32 in the middle of the season. I mean, what are we even doing here? If his name were anything else and he had the resume, he'd be an easy cut. So, yeah, you can cut OBJ in your Dynasty leagues. Jelani Woods placed on IR. He'll miss the entire 2024 season with a toe injury. Basically, I can't think of really an exception. Any player who misses 2 entire seasons in a row, they're dead for fantasy football. Those players never come back. Never, ever, ever. So, yeah, I mean, again, I love the talent of Woods. 3rd-round pick in 2022. He had a really good rookie year. But you can drop Woods in Dynasty leagues if there's no room for him in an IR spot. You don't have enough IR spots or other things. There's just no IR spots in your league or whatever. Like, Woods does not have Dynasty value. He is no longer ranked in my Dynasty rankings. So feel free to move on. Cut Jelani Woods. Desmond Ridder was cut by the Cardinals. I mean, how bad must Ridder be if Clayton Tune beat him out? I mean, think about that for a second. How Clayton Tune, we saw play last year, was horrible. So Ridder must be even worse. You can cut Ridder in all Dynasty leagues, and Tune might literally be 32nd of 32 in terms of backup quarterbacks that I'm looking to add. So, yeah, I am not running to add Clayton Tune, but you can cut Desmond Ridder. Noah Brown was cut by the Texans. I'm actually kind of surprised by this one. Brown was a fantasy hero last year down the stretch. I don't know if you remember, but Brown won people fantasy championships with his run down the stretch when the Texans had injuries to Tank Dell and other players. They gave him $3 million guaranteed this year. So it's a stunning cut. I really did not expect him to be cut. But you can obviously drop Brown in all Dynasty leagues. John Mechie seems to have won the wide receiver 4 job. I unfortunately think he's not going to get traded because this is a contending team. I mean, he is now their wide receiver 4. He looked good in the preseason. I don't think anyone's going to give anything valuable for him. Mechie's a must stash in Dynasty because we know this is a good player. Was a good player at Alabama. Mechie had 2nd round draft capital. This is a player we know is good. So I usually don't like stashing these wide receivers, but he's a rare exception. I will stash John Mechie. And lastly, this was last piece of news. Tim Patrick and Samaje Perine were released by the Broncos. They released them after failing to find a trade partner. I try to hang on to both of them at the bottom of Dynasty rosters. Patrick actually looked really good, and Perine has had relevance. Try not to cut running backs like Perine. Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin are both Dynasty sells. I know you probably can't get anything for either one, but if Patrick release gives any hope for either one of them, I'd take it. I'd easily accept any third for Mims or Franklin, especially Franklin, because Franklin is still the wide receiver 5 on this team. He's behind Devon Vele on the depth chart. Maybe add Vele in the deepest of Dynasty leagues. And lastly, Blake Watson made the Broncos as running back 4, but he's the clear running back 4. I'd only hang on in the absolute deepest Dynasty leagues. Now, if you liked the video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. As always, the best way to support the channel is to subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best up-to-the-minute fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon. Dynasty Redraft, Starts It, and more. Every sign-up helps support my independent content. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.